Some places are so silent that the silence itself feels alive. This story is about an old house in Panapitia, a place where people came and went, but the air always carried a strange heaviness. Everything seemed fine during the day, but nights were always different. This incident happened about 15 years ago. A man who worked for a media company returned home late after work, around 12:30. The city was quiet except for the distant barking of dogs, and the air was cool and damp. His room was in the corner of the house, with an old door that opened straight into the backyard. He took off his coat, removed his shoes, and sat on a chair for a moment. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the old wall creaking, the kind of company only loneliness gives. He was tired, but sleep was still far away. He took out a cigarette, hoping that a long drag might bring some peace. He didn't have a flashlight, only an old red lantern that his grandfather had given him, and it was still with him after all these years. He lit the lantern. A soft red glow spread across the room. That red light made everything look lifeless, as if the frames on the wall were breathing slowly. He took the lantern and stepped outside. The backyard was small, the soil soft, and in the middle stood a large mango tree. Beneath it lay a pile of dried leaves. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of earth rose up, but it wasn't pleasant. It carried something old, almost rotten. He sat on the step, placed the lantern beside him, and lit his cigarette. The smoke rose through the red light, twisting into strange shapes, first like a hand, then a face, before fatting into the air. Then suddenly, a faint sound came. Karu, karu, karu. Like someone dragging their feet through the leaves. He picked up the lantern and shined it toward the mango tree. At first, nothing. The leaves swayed gently in the breeze. Then, after a few seconds, a face peeked out from behind the tree and vanished. His heartbeat quickened. "Who's there?" he called out loudly. No reply. Only a cold gust of wind brushed against his face. The red flame flickered for a moment. He stood up and pointed the light more firmly toward the tree. Then the face appeared again, clearer this time. White clothes, white hair. But the face, it was wiped clean like someone had erased it. No eyes, no mouth, just pale skin stretched across nothing. He took a step back. The cigarette slipped from his fingers. The red glow now reached the figure's feet, but the feet weren't touching the ground. The figure was floating. "I'll call the police," he shouted, but his throat was tight. The figure stopped, then slowly began to move toward him. Its body swayed, weightless, as if drifting through the air. With it came a faint chiming sound, like a small bell ringing continuously. Now it was barely 10 feet away. The lantern's light fell on its chest, and he saw it, a single red mark, right where the heart should be. The wind stopped. The backyard fell completely silent. Only the soft flicker of the lantern flame remained. Then he heard it, a slow, whispering voice. "Why did you call me?" His throat went dry. He tried to step back, but his feet felt glued to the ground. Each breath brought the cold scent of damp soil. The lantern's glow was fading. The figure raised its hand, long, thin, the bones visible beneath pale skin. For a moment, everything froze, and then the lantern's flame flared violently, flooding the yard with red light. The figure was now right in front of him. Beneath its clothes, air swirled as if there was nothing inside. He felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He wanted to move, to scream, but no sound came. His vision blurred. The red light danced wildly, and behind that white figure stood a tall, dark shadow, shapeless and still. Then everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was in his sister's room. She was leaning over him, shaking him, shouting, "Are you okay? What happened?" There were deep nail marks on his arm, as if someone had grabbed him tightly. His clothes were soaked with mud and moisture. He tried to speak, but no words came. In the morning, when he looked at the lantern, its glass was blackened from the inside, as if the flame hadn't burned something, but devoured it. Since that night, the backyard was never the same. Whenever the wind blew, the mango leaves made a strange whispering sound, as if someone was still speaking softly among them. And whenever the red lantern glowed again, someone walked behind the tree. After that night, everything seemed fine for a few days, or at least it looked fine on the surface. But inside, everything had changed. Every morning when he woke up, he felt as if someone had been walking around his room all night. A strange kind of exhaustion, like he hadn't slept at all. He didn't tell his sister anything. He just said he had a cold, that's why his voice sounded heavy. But he knew the truth, that voice wasn't because of illness, it was fear. At night, whenever he tried to sleep, every 2 minutes there was a faint click or tap-tap sound. Sometimes from the window, sometimes from inside the wardrobe. One night he woke up and saw that the wardrobe door was slightly open. Inside, darkness and a faint smell of dust. He stepped closer, opened the door fully, but nothing happened. Only an old photograph fell to the floor. It was a photo of the same backyard, but something was different. The mango tree was there, but beneath it stood a white figure. In its hand was a red lantern, but the flame of that lantern burned downward, as if upside down. He picked up the photo, his heartbeat racing. On the back, something was written, "You will return." The next night, he decided to go back to the backyard. Something inside him told him that what happened that night wasn't a dream. If it was real, he needed to understand it. Around 1 a.m., he lit the red lantern again. The air was colder this time, and clouds covered the sky. As soon as he opened the door, a cold wave rushed in like not air, but a shadow passing through. Everything outside was still. The mango tree stood the same, but the leaves rustled faintly, as if something inside them was moving. He stepped forward slowly, lifting the lantern higher. The red light revealed every corner of the ground, and there were faint marks in the soil like footprints, but not pressed deeply, as if someone had just brushed the air over them. "Who's there?" he called again. The wind replied with a cold, hissing sound. He turned to go back, but suddenly he felt someone watching him. He slowly turned around. Someone was standing behind the tree. A figure dressed completely in white, but this time there was a black burn mark in the middle of its face. Its hair wasn't moving with the wind, yet it rippled like something floating underwater. "You saw me." The voice echoed inside his mind, though no lips moved. His throat tightened, but his heart screamed to run. He stepped back, but his feet were sinking into the ground. The lantern's light began to flicker, and within its flame another shape began to appear, another face, pale and eyeless. "You didn't recognize me." The voice came again, closer this time, so close he could feel warm breath near his ear. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. A gust of wind swept past, and the lantern went out. Everything went dark, only the pounding of his heart and the rustling of leaves. Then he saw it, red light glowing among the mango leaves. But it wasn't coming from his lantern. It was shining from the very spot where he had first seen that white figure. He stepped closer and saw an old photo frame half buried in dirt. He picked it up and wiped the dust away. Inside was an old picture of the same house, but something was different again. In that picture, beneath the mango tree, stood another man. And that man looked exactly like him. "I've been waiting for you." The words brushed against his ear, but there was no one there. A cold breeze ran through his hair, his throat went dry, and the frame slipped from his hands. The red lantern suddenly lit up on its own, but its flame was burning downward, as if gravity had reversed. He stumbled back and saw, behind the mango tree, a shadow was forming. Tall, growing, slowly taking a human shape. But its face was lost in darkness. Then he noticed small footprints appearing on the ground, one after another, coming toward him. Faint impressions in the soil, like mist stepping closer. His heartbeat quickened, and the air fell completely still. And then he heard it, another voice, soft but clear. This was only the beginning. He grabbed the lantern and tried to run, but the handle was so hot it burned his hand. He screamed, and everything drowned in red light. When he regained consciousness, it was morning. He was lying on the ground, the lantern beside him extinguished. But beneath the mango tree now stood two shadows. One of the man, and one of the figure in white. After that morning, everything felt different. The house was the same, but it seemed as if even the air had changed. Every corner felt like it was whispering something, but without a sound. He thought maybe it was all in his head. Maybe he hadn't been sleeping well, or maybe it was just stress. But when he looked again toward the mango tree, everything was just as it had been. Those two shadows were still there. One was his own, and the other belonged to the man in white. He stayed inside that night, locking the door. Every few minutes he peeked out the window, but the shadows didn't move. It was as if time had stopped. Around 11 p.m., he decided he needed to know the truth. He took out a diary that had belonged to the house's previous owner, which he had found inside an old cupboard. On the very first page it said, "This house belonged to someone else, and perhaps it still does." Further down it read, "What lies buried beneath the mango tree was never human, but it became human when someone called to it." His hands trembled slightly. He thought maybe it was just an old story, a legend, but something in his heart told him it was real. He kept reading and saw another line. "The man in white appears when someone burns a flame on that ground. No one knows his name, but he comes to those who hide things inside themselves. He shows you everything you're running from." His mind was now tangled in confusion. He shut the diary and looked out the window. The red lantern was still there, but beneath its flame, something was written on the ground, faint marks forming words in the soil. He stepped outside slowly and saw the message appear in the dirt. "You've already called me." He turned around, but no one was there. The same dusty smell filled the air. His throat went dry and the diary slipped from his hands. The next day, he decided to leave the house. He started packing his things, but as he stepped out of the room, he saw a chair in the living room, the same chair his grandfather used to sit in. And on that chair, there were fresh impressions, as if someone had just gotten up. Fear crawled up his spine, but he stayed silent. He picked up the lantern and placed it near the front door, ready to leave in the morning. But when he woke up, the door was locked, and the lantern was back in the backyard. He understood now someone or something didn't want him to leave. That night, while lying in bed, he saw a dream of an old-time, narrow alleys and a man burying someone beneath the mango tree. The man held a red lantern, wearing white clothes. The dream felt so real that when he opened his eyes, it seemed like he was still there. His heart was pounding fast. Then he noticed dirt was falling beside his bed. It was coming from underneath it. Terrified, he leaned down to look and saw words carved into the soil. "You are just like me." Now his mind was breaking apart. He screamed, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" And then he saw it, outside the window near the mango tree. The man in white was standing there. But this time, his face was fully visible. It was his own face. He touched his cheek and realized that man wasn't someone else. It was him. Tears filled his eyes, but fear and disbelief tangled together inside him. On the last page of the diary, it said, "When a man can't escape the sins of his past, he creates his own shadow." He closed the diary and looked behind him. His shadow was no longer separate from the man in white. They moved together, one face, one body. He spent the whole night thinking maybe he had gone insane. But when morning came, he saw that the mango tree had completely burned down. And in its place lay an old lantern, exactly like his own. He picked up the lantern, and its flame lit up by itself. He turned around, and on the wall, words had appeared. "There's no difference anymore." He understood then he had become a part of the story. He couldn't leave the house. The man who once stood behind the tree was now inside him. He quietly went back inside, placed the diary on the table, and set the lantern near the window. Outside, the wind was still blowing, but the tree was gone. Only its shadow remained, and that shadow now walked with him. After that night, life seemed to stop. He lived in the house, but it felt as if the house lived inside him. Every day the same silence, the same cold, the same darkness. Every morning when he opened his eyes, something was written outside the window, sometimes in the soil, sometimes in drops of dew. And the words were always the same. "You are not alone anymore." At first he was afraid, but slowly he got used to those words. He told himself it was all an illusion, a trick of the mind. But each day it grew deeper. He started writing in his diary, one note for each day. "Today, the mango tree came again in my dream. Today, I saw myself inside the wall, as if someone else was watching me. Today, the red lantern's flame lit by itself." He kept writing, and with every passing day, his belief in himself faded. One morning when he woke up, he saw that the words in the diary had changed. What he had written was no longer there. It now said, "I am not who you think I am. You are the one writing me." The pen slipped from his hand. He closed the diary and looked behind him. His shadow stood straight, but it wasn't moving. as if someone else was standing separate from his body. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "If this is real, then tell me, who are you?" And for the first time, he saw the shadow's lips move. There was no sound, but the words echoed in his heart. "I am the one you forgot." Images from his childhood began to surface. An old house, an old garden, and a small grave beneath a mango tree. He remembered now, he once had a younger brother. Small, fragile, always by his side. But one rainy day he got lost and drowned. The family buried him under the mango tree. And after that day, he never went near that place again. Now everything made sense. The man in white, he was his younger brother. His face was the same because they were one and the same. And the shadow that followed him was the shadow of those childhood memories that were never truly buried. Tears ran down his face. He went outside, dug at the burned spot beneath the mango tree. Inside, he found old bones and a small iron chain. The chain had his brother's name engraved on it. He fell to his knees and, placing his hands into the soil, whispered, "Forgive me, I had forgotten." Then the wind stopped. Everything became completely still. The red lantern lit up on its own, its light falling directly on his face. He saw that the mango tree, which had burned down the day before, was now growing again. Each branch glowing faintly, as if some old soul had finally found peace. He picked up the diary and wrote for the last time. "He left me, or maybe I went to him." Then he went back inside, placed the lantern by the window, and closed the door. After that day, no one ever saw him again. Neighbors said they saw light from the house only once. A red glow that shone through the window and hovered above the mango tree. Then everything went dark. Years passed. The house now stands empty. But on windy nights near the mango tree, the red light can still be seen. Some say that if a person goes there at 12:45 a.m., a man in white will be standing behind him. And that man will have the same face as the one who came to see him. They say some stories don't end when they're written. They end when they are lived. And this story was one of them. You're still here, good. Then you've already felt it. Subscribe to WraithEcho before the next story finds you.